and are redelivered to the customer back in the comfortable area where it was dropped off. So you're never outside, and you never have to wait. It's just great. Over here is cleanup when we sell a car, when we need to do something special like buff a car. It happens over here, and that's what these guys do. They're a lot porter. We have a bunch of lot back here that we use for pre-owned cars that haven't been stock.
With a couple of exceptions, was built by local contractors and with local materials and all that. The ACM panels, of course, weren't locally produced, but if we could get it here, we did it here.
And if from our, when the tones go off from our dispatch launch, we're usually pulling pitch within 8 to 10 minutes. So it's a real quick process. Once he accepts a flight and we are locked up and got our stuff out of here. Alan and I, it's like a small ER or ICU. We carry 2 units of blood, we carry all the emergency equipment, we carry ventilators, pumps.
Page overhead so they can see what this is like.
We do adults and peds, 1 or 2 patients. This aircraft can pick up probably 600 pounds.
This will be pretty loud, so don't.
Wi-Fi 1, this is a test of your paging system only. Wi-Fi 1, this is a test of your paging system.
Coming out to the airport, some of you may have heard me at the Rotary Club and civic organizations, and I kind of got a same old story kind of thing, but the airport plays more of a role in our community than you probably would realize. I'm asked a lot about the economic impact that the airport has on the community, the economy, in our town and in our county, and I do a real quick version of my story. At Cracker Barrel days, we had a 5-stop day, but it was a real estate day, closing on property, so time constraints and all was of utmost importance. And we always had, the Ford Air Command having the rental cars ready and everything ready, so when we hit the ground, they could run and do their thing, get back, go to the next place. And our first stop of the day was a little airport up in Illinois, and that interstate went by that little town, that interchange, and they were looking to buy that property that day to build that store. We couldn't get a hold of the people at the airport before we left here, couldn't get a hold of them in the air. We pull up, nobody greets us. We pull onto the ramp, up to the fence, we shut down, we get out, go in, the guy sitting there on the desk with his legs crossed. First thing out of his mouth was, "Would you park in the front door for?" Well, I said, the most important thing I need to know right now as far as our rental van for Cracker Barrel, and he commenced to telling me, "I guess it's in town, you're going to have to get a cab to go." And Danny Evans knocks me out of the way and says, pushes them glasses up and says, "Are you from here?" And the guy says, "Yeah, I was born and raised here." He said, "Does everybody in this town act like you?" And he says, "Well, what's that mean?" He says, "Don't answer the question." He looked at me and he said, "Let's go." We left that town that day. They never got a Cracker Barrel. So the first impression, when you hear people say the airport makes the first impressions to a community, it's the front door of the community, that's what it does, because the CEOs nowadays don't arrive on bus, or don't arrive on train. They usually fly a chartered jet or their own company jet, and they try to come to the closest airport that meets their needs or where they're going. And we've had examples of that since we've been in business the last 5 years. Someone lands, brings his wife, brings his kids, greet him, get the cars out there to them, give them directions where to go. If they start small talk conversation with you, answer their questions. I'm from here, she's from here, we know about our community, we know about our schools and our churches and our civic organizations, we know everything there is. And I tell people there's no place like home. And I've been everywhere, and there really is no place like Middle Tennessee. But anyway, then all of a sudden,
this is the original original sign from the very first Cracker Barrel that used to be on Highway 109. Anybody old enough to remember that? Okay, there she goes. Okay, it's now a closed convenience store / gas station. It's painted white. And a little bit of trivia about that, if you're a movie buff, part of the original Smoking the Bandit was shot there. Because they did some of that on Highway 109 as well. So that's kind of some history there as well. But that's the original sign from that store number 1 when Cracker Barrel first began. There's many things in this room in particular that will never make it to a Cracker Barrel just because either they're much too valuable or actually considered priceless. One of the things to point out is this, and I'm not exactly sure what it's called, but it is a vessel that was used on the back of a covered wagon to hold flour, sugar, salt, and those kind of things. And they've even contacted the Smithsonian trying to figure out kind of some history behind it or value to it. Everybody's still scratching their heads. But the thought is it's probably from a fairly wealthy family on a stagecoach or on a covered wagon because of all the ornamentation and paint and detail that are on it. That's kind of a cool piece of history in here, which was kind of an unusual thing. Now we have electric charging stations, so we've evolved nostalgically into is where the team that works here, the Decor Warehouse folks, where they actually mock up the walls to send to a specific store. There's no 2 stores alike. There are a few things that are in every store. Every store has the rifle over the fireplace, the what? The stove.
Red light by the bathroom.
The stoplight by the bathroom, which can confuse some people if they're not familiar with it. I actually encountered one of our guests walked up and she was standing there and said, "Can I help you, ma'am?" She said, "I'm waiting for it to turn green." She was serious. And I said, "I hope it's working because you could be standing there a long time." It's not literal. And there's also the deer head over the fireplace. That's in every store as well. But this one is already mocked up. You can see we have kind of faked-in windows here and a fake door so that they can set it all up, organize what they're going to do. Oh, thank you. Organize it and set it up. And then they'll take pictures of this so that they can, when they get to the new store or the store that's being redone, they can actually have the design already laid out like a template, and they can pop it into place and install it. Every single item in this warehouse has one of these metal barcodes. Some people confuse that with their being able to buy it, but it's not. It's just so that they can be inventoried and cataloged so that they can keep up with these. There's about 900 roughly pieces in each Cracker Barrel. So 900 times 625 is, I don't know, anybody good with math? A lot of pieces. The number is given to the land when the land is purchased. The store may not open for a couple of years yet. So just because you're store 100 doesn't mean you're, in that order. They could jump around in sequence a little bit.
But I haven't seen them in the store.
This is the retail training store. This is a classroom. So this is where new managers will come to actually be trained on the visual merchandising standards and skills that we have at Cracker Barrel. It's complicated. It's not your typical retailer. If you think about other retailers, who in here is involved in retail in some way? Anybody? Nobody, but you shop. Okay, you buy things. Most retailers are much more, they're grouped by category. All your music's here, all your clothes are there, all your dishes are in one spot. And our interpretation of an old country store really takes all those things in 20 more categories and mixes them all up into one display.
Was a used furniture store at one point. I don't know, that was before my Lebanese times. But now Bob and Pam Black, who are transplants here to Lebanon, and they've lived here for almost 20 years now, something like that. 15 to 20 years, and they love this town. They love everything about it, thank God. They purchased this in 2009. We put a roof on it in 2010, and then in 2012, June, we really started renovating this place, and we just opened this June of this year. We had our first event, that was the Lebanon High School Band Booster Second Chance Prom. And then right after that, we had our grand opening and then the prospect benefit. Now we're just rolling. If you want to get married in the spring of 2014, call somebody else. I'm already booked, sorry, unless you want a Sunday. But we've reopened as a private rental venue. So corporate meetings, weddings, receptions, holiday parties, la-di-da-di-da-di. We also do a lot of stuff for the community.
Lebanon Square was formed in 1802 with an auction of town lots, and its location was picked because of its proximity to the Big Spring, later known as Town Spring, which is still over in the corner. And this has proved beneficial and disastrous through the years. Lebanon Square has hosted political rallies. This is a picture of our square looking north. That's North Cumberland, that street. This is when William Jennings Bryan was campaigning for the 1896 presidential election, and he made a stop on our
Offices, 3
square.
offices back through here. They outgrew the building, we outgrew the building, so in 2006, we did a survey with our members and said, okay, we've outgrown the building, what do we need to do? Do we need to buy another building? Do we need to build a building? So we did a survey with our members and everything came back that we needed to stay on the square. The chamber should be on the downtown square. So looking at what we need to do, we looked at putting an elevator in this building, building a nicer boardroom upstairs. Well, an elevator was going to cost us about $85,000. So with that in mind, we thought, okay, that's a little much to put in the building just to go upstairs. Mr. Jerry McCullough, who some of you knew, owned the building next door, and their law office had moved and had built a new building down behind Wilson Bank and Trust. And so I called Jerry one day, and because he had the building leased to 2 different tenants, and I called him and I said, Jerry, would you be interested in selling that building to the chamber? He said, Sue, I'm really not interested right now. And I said, well, would you do me a favor? When you do, would you call me? So about 6 months later, his tenants announced they were moving out, and he called and said, does the chamber want to buy my building? And Mr. Ken Caldwell was the chair of the board at that time, and I called Ken and said, we're going to buy Jerry's building. And he said, Sue, how are we going to pay for it? And I said, we're going to sell bricks. And that's what we did. We sold all those bricks on that wall and raised $190,000 to help purchase the building, for the down payment of the building and the renovation of this building. That building, that side was the Shannon's Drugstore, which she referred to earlier. The Cumberland students, the Castle Heights students, we still have Castle Heights graduates and Cumberland graduates come in here and say, okay, where was Shannon's Drug? And they'll be standing right there and think you're standing in it. So they have to tour it. They just think it's great that it's, you know, like it is now.